You don't seem alarmed.
Would it help?
Hey everybody, we are pleased to have Falk Hofmann for the second time. We did this entire recording and we weren't recording my audio, so we're redoing again. He's being a great sport about this. Coming to us from Berlin, Germany. And if I can zoom in on Rise Berlin, let's see if I can see if the map will allow me to. What is going on here? Let me go back to map here. There we go. So Rise Berlin, somewhere in here. You're over by a river somewhere.
Exactly.
Let me type it in. There we go. All right. So you guys are. I always bring that. I don't know what it is. I kind of dig geography when it comes to the VFX houses, because it kind of like gives you guys an idea, you know, where you go to work every day. You know, is that you guys, Rise Berlin, or that's not it?
That seems like no, Rise Berlin, that's something different. That's some other company which is very similar. It's called, just let's go for Rise FX.
There we go. Rise Berlin
Yes,
VFX.
that's more like it.
So you're kind of tucked back here, I noticed. Is that me, or are you? Is this your building right here, this front one?
We have several offices, so peppered into into this whole area. But all of them are very close. Yeah, this is exactly the one, and then we have some more in this very area.
Gotcha. So it's
very close to the river. That's nice.
So you can, when you get out, you can come up to the river and just
exactly.
Some of you guys have a smoke and just hang out there.
Right.
It's a beautiful city. It doesn't feel very, you know, when I kind of go through, it doesn't feel very urban. It feels almost somewhat rural.
Yeah.
So,
it actually is.
So Falk is currently working at Rise VFX as head of comp, formerly compositing supervisor, now head of comp, and formerly head of 2D at Pixelmondo in Germany, Stuttgart.
Correct.
And then Industrial Lights and Magic in London, and then again back at Pixelmondo, and then Mark 13. And then I think there's a couple more here. Method Studios, MPC, again, Pixelmondo, Macavision.
Yeah.
I know we had Eric on earlier. He was talking about Macavision being a big, heavy hitter on our interviews. So lots of experience here. Currently working on The Kingsmen, and you guys just finished up on Artemis Fowl, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Correct. It's a
and
little
then
bit,
you got the Babylon Berlin, and that was episode 1. I think they're on season 3, right?
Correct, yes.
And then Stranger Things 3, and a ton of movies here, Ready Player One, Star Trek, Discovery. So I also have his Vimeo link. He has some really awesome plugins that he's created, and he also goes through some other tutorials as well. We're going to go over 2 of these in our Tool Time and Nuke that are really cool. And you can check out Rise at VFXforFilmmakers.com and see some of the newest movies they're working on and go through some of their work. So they have some show reels here of 2019. And then we got a couple clips to kind of review, go over. And then we have some questions to cover from the questions that we had calling in. Sorry, guys, I'm just waking up today. So anyway, let's go through the history, as we did before here, of your background here. Did you want to talk about what got you into compositing, or at least into 3D, obviously?
Yeah, in the very first beginning, I was doing internships or like actually playing around at home with some editorial software. So, and then afterwards I was doing an internship in a local TV station and had a little bit linear editing, analog stuff. That was pretty nice. And then I moved on to university since I got pretty hooked by it. And then at some point we have a mandatory internship during university, and this one I did at Electrofilm in Stuttgart, Germany, and had a chance to work as a comp guy in there, not just roto and prepping stuff. So I got the opportunity just to work on simple shots, but doing it from start to finish, which was really nice back then, not just have like this stereotype internship tasks to do. and I've been there for 6 months, I think. Yeah, it was 6 months, and have a couple of projects in there. Like it's not like high level stuff, but it was actually pretty good to dive into and just get to learn the basics with back then with Fusion. And yeah, so I just made this for I think it was 2009, yeah, and mostly like German stuff like parkour or Russian lessons. It's like a documentary from Russia, volcano, German stuff. So it's very simple, and yeah, so it's not like high profile, but it was good. It was a really good start.
We're doing a series on my my website for Fusion, and my opinion to my question to you is, what do you think of Fusion now that it's been kind of adopted into Resolve and so forth, and into DaVinci Resolve? Is it? I find it very buggy. Is it not the Resolve? I'm sorry. Is it not the Fusion that you remember back in the day, or?
I haven't really touched Fusion in actually years,
Okay.
But I know even that back then there were some, like the particle system were, in my opinion, superior to the particle system nowadays in Nuke. So they had some really good features and options to do so. But yeah, since Nuke got established and get really, really deeply integrated into pipeline stuff, it's getting really hard to get Nuke out of the business. So I think we're going to stick with Nuke for a while. But for smaller shops, and especially with the integration of Resolve, I think it's not a bad option to at least look into for the usage, depending what you're after, of course.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's just to me, it's like I think it's almost there. It's got some really cool tools, but it just seems like Nuke is still more stable, at least from what I've noticed, not versus the standalone.
Yeah.
So then you went on to Pixamondo. From there.
Correct. So I had I knew the supervisor from Electrofilm, and he moved on to Pixamondo Shanghai, and then it was fairly easy to me to just, hey, do you still need people? And yeah, just come over. And then I just joined Pixamondo in China, worked there for a while on mainly on Red Tails, on some commercials as well, but like rather low profile, local stuff from China. And starting on Red Tails, which was pretty good since we worked for ILM, so we have to prove the standards and all the technical stuff look-wise and all the difficulties to get through the approval from ILM, which was pretty interesting. But I stopped working at Pixamondo, or my time was running out at Pixamondo China, and I transferred to Pixamondo in just Stuttgart and just kept working on the same project, which was pretty nice at some point. Because I knew everything up front, so I could just continue there, just different office, other shots, but same project.
You know, I hear very good positive things from previous guests on Pixamondo. I do find in their resumes they end up going back and coming back, and it seems like a pretty cool place to work.
Yeah, obviously they had some issues during some point, especially with money-wise, and people wasn't get paid, so there's no denial of that. But which was really cool, especially the Stuttgart office, what I enjoyed is the team. So it was always driven by the team, the people around. It was actually really fun to work with. And especially on Red Tail, it was a very, very skilled team, but almost just like friends in one office and just having a good time together and improving the skills since we learned quite a lot. But the Stuttgart office was always known for the people rather than the actual overall company.
Yeah, we get that a lot with colleges too. When I teach at colleges, it's like it's really the body of people, the body of, in our case, instructors, in your case, artists, that one has to take a look at versus the business side of the actual studio itself.
Yeah, you know. Since you spend so much time in the office, and if it comes to crunch time, even more. So I think it's really important to have a good mood, have a good vibe, and so the settings are actually pretty good. And then it's fun to work with. Then it doesn't really bother too much when you have to do overtime or have a bit more of a stressful time. Because then you have a good environment and still have fun at work.
I find when I work at either a game studio, as I used to work at NetherRealm, or if I work at a post-production house for commercial, it seems like the day just goes by so quick. And some of these guys that fly out from LA, they want these nice long lunches or something. I don't know how that ever happened, but I was like, we got to get back to work. It's like the desire is to get back in that office and churn away. You know what I mean? And then before you know it, the day is over. I mean, it is weird. Even on a 8-9 hour usual day outside of crunch. You
Yeah,
know.
totally got that.
So you got to do some previs for Oblivion, which is one of my favorite movies.
Yes. So we had this also in Stuttgart, and I was lucky enough that the supervisor was trusting me and says, hey, we need to prepare plates they have shot for the projection later on. Like there's a sky tower, and they have on set they had projected the whole environment, so they get all the reflections, all the light interaction properly right on set. So what we have done for the pre-shoot, we just started to receive those plates, which were like 13 cameras with I think 15 different takes for each 2 minutes long. So we have to stitch those and time lapse. There were like moving clouds just above this thing. So it was all about clouds since the setting was above those levels. So we have to stitch those and just render them overnight. And back then, file storage was not that cheap or not that available in this kind of scale. And then, of course, if you render this whole sequence, so just imagine one projection setup takes 13 HD tiles in EXR, 2 minutes long. So 2 minutes, one clip, time 13, times 15 for the whole projection setup. So it was actually kind of a tricky situation. How do you get rendered these? And how do you handle the file storage? How many versions can you take and stuff like that? And then we got delivered those. We got half a year later, we got the plates, and they looked actually pretty amazing since all the reflections, all the stuff in this very shiny environment were on point since they were just the real ones.
Especially
And then
we
we
got that
continued on
refraction going
action.
on with that pool,
Yeah,
that outside
yeah, the
pool.
pool is a different story. This was kind of tricky, yeah, and then they wanted caustics on glass, which is not really the physical way of doing caustics, but nevertheless, yeah, it's the creative side of stuff.
It seems like your 2013, 2014, within 2 years, you've worked at like 4 different VFX houses here. You went from Pixamondo, MPC,
Yeah,
so Game of Thrones, Star Trek, Into Darkness, The Lone Ranger, Transformers: Age of Extinction, The Maze
yeah,
Runner, and then back to Pixamondo with Gone with the Bullets.
correct. So what had happened was I transferred from the Stuttgart office, oh no, from China again to the Pixelmondo London office. But unfortunately, this one went bankrupt after I think after we finished Star Trek Into Darkness, and I thought, okay, maybe it might be time for a change for a different company. So I moved on to Vancouver with MPC for the Lone Ranger, which was just a short gig for like 3 months or something similar, not very long run. And later on, I looked around and found the Metal Studios, and they were looking for people for the Maze Runner, which was like a long-term project, like really like 6 to 9 months, roughly. Somehow can't really remember precisely. And then I joined Method for the Maze Runner, and afterwards for Transformers. And
Mm.
after a while, I thought, okay, I might move back to closer to home. And yeah, it was fairly easy to get back with Pixamondo. So I thought, okay, I might do that. And then that's the reason why I have those switches, although the swaps of those companies.
Do you find any studios, specifically the big shots, have very small windows of their contract, usually?
Yeah, I do have a bit like NPC, of course, like they hire a huge amount of people, and of course they can't just take everyone, and of course they have to look for money wise. But it was really like, okay, 3 months and you out of here, and then maybe we can check in like 2 months later if there's something coming up. But it was also really like of course it was just like a project-based contract. So, but it's not like you are treated as or considered as staff. So it's really just hired, do the project, and then move on. In the opposite of Meta Studios, I had a feeling they were interested they're going to be stay later. So I ended this thing on my end, which was actually really sad because the people were also pretty nice. Was also feeling very comfortable and nice, good environment, good project, supervisor. Everything was fine. But I moved back to Germany for other reasons, and so I had to leave them. But they were actually interested to keep those people, which was a little bit different compared to the bigger sized NPC Vancouver office.
Yeah, I found in Chicago we got certain VFX houses here, like Frame Store. They have a small group of people there, and I've interviewed there once and applied there a million times, and it just seems like they're only taking, and if they and my students that have gone through there, they have like a month contracts, and then they're off to wherever, so to speak, end up in New York or in Los Angeles.
Sorry.
The next ones we got here is so you're moving up to division lead compositor. Could you kind of give us a breakdown as far as the difference between, say, a division lead compositor, a lead compositor, and, say, head of comp? And
okay, yeah, it might be. It's just at the end, it's just titles. So regular compositor, of course, you're doing just your daily business. You get the shots, you send it to dailies, and speak with or talk to either your comp soup, your lead, depending on the size of the project, or directly to your VFX supervisor. And division lead and lead compositor, yeah, I mean that's more or less the same depending on what you're aiming for. But we had on John Kwai, like the Snow Girl and Dark Crystal, for example, we had multiple lead compositor and we had multiple facilities working, or multiple Pixelmondo offices working on the same show. So I think they came up with this idea, division lead compositor, since we're doing dailies with other people leading smaller sequences. So it was like a little bit rather closer to a division comp soup than a lead compositor. I think it's just a very confusing naming convention. But and head of 2D is a whole different story, because then I was overseeing workflows, interchanging formats or interchanging tasks between different departments. So I have to deal with the head of FX and head of 3D to make sure that we have a more or less stable pipeline transition from 3D to 2D, and training, resources, who's going to be doing which projects and things like that. So it's more like an organizing task or management task rather than doing the actual comp work or review things. But on Pixelmondo, which I just did everything on the same thing. I was a comp, I was the head, and sometimes I was comp souping things. So it's like a little fluent transition in there.
Do you ever see people burn out at all, or where they're like, this is not for me, I'm out of here? Yeah. As far as compositing.
Yeah, you mean like they just collapse or can't do it anymore?
Yeah, they're just I don't know. They're just kind of like I don't think they just collapse on the ground or nothing. But I mean, like where they're sort of like, I can't. This is just not me, and then they kind of disappear.
Yeah, I had this also as well. Also, a phase where I just had really issues when too many tasks at the same time come up. So I experienced on myself. I experienced on other people who say, okay, that's. When you can't go from crunch time to crunch time, at some point, what you have to do is like taking off half a year, if you can afford, of course, but hopefully you can, and just to get your life back together, because from crunch time to crunch time, of course, it's pretty difficult to take a breath, take a rest, and just calm down a bit. So that
seems to be the biggest warning sign from all my interviewers or interviewees. They're always saying when you go from comp to comp, then things get hairy,
Yeah. It's not nice, actually. So what I prefer is switching people from, if you have like multiple projects, so trying to actually have those who are finishing in the crunch time right now, transfer them into the next project, which is just starting, which is not really like stressful already. So not just everyone on the same project and they just trying to finish this one, and afterwards transfer the whole crew on the next project, try to just finish those. So I have rather people having a little bit of gap in between, so we can enjoy the nice times or like the quiet times more. And what I also enforce or try to enforce, that people get off after a project at least like a week or two, just to entirely do something else, not in front of a computer.
And is this where you, around the time that you met Fabian, right? He was working at Pixelmondo with you on Bridge of Spies, or am I wrong on that?
Correct. I think Bridge of Spies, Shannara, Purge, Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead. Yeah. I think we had a couple of projects together.
So Triple X, Return of Xander Cage, The Fate of the Furious.
Yeah, Furious always comes back. It's always it's just like
coming back. It's like Transformers.
Yes, it's certainly like that.
And then, could you go into your small time at ILM How was
Yes.
that experience? Was it working on Star
So
Wars
at some what I
episode?
had, since I'm trying to get some more changes from time to time or to see something else, get some different impressions and stuff like that, just to change the environment a bit. So I agreed with Pixel, so hey, I'm gonna leave for like half a year, and just come back afterwards. And we agreed on that. And then I moved to ILM, which was actually, of course, like the long run target all the time. Like, okay, at some point I want to be at ILM since it's like it's these guys that's doing all this amazing things for decades now. And it was really enjoyable. As a compositor, it's actually really, really cool because you get high quality renders, you get a defined look, everything is in place. It's pretty organized depending on the project. I had also like different experience on this times, but an example, Ready Player One, super smooth, super creative. It's a blast to work on with this very team. Very skilled people. You just, everything was free, like, hey, can I do that? Yeah, go ahead and just put more in it. Like really every compositor streams. Can I add more explosion in the back? Yeah, you should. You certainly should. So things like that were actually really fun. While working on Star Wars is a little bit more restricted to, of course, like the franchise and everything has to match certain looks or criteria. So you're not like this entirely free. But therefore, you get renders which you literally just match the blacks and more or less they are fitting and they are consistent throughout the sequence since they are shifting the matching stuff from look-wise, not in comp, so they shift it to one step prior and you have a really good asset and they just render it and then you just comp it in like, wow, that's fits very well. I'm not really used to this kind of quality levels.
You were saying that, yeah, as the VFX house gets fancier and more reputable, obviously ILM and so forth, the higher quality the renders, the less taxing it is on the compositor.
Yes, absolutely. And of course you save time. I think it's the right approach. If you have a rock solid asset, you can just throw it in every light situation you have and just make the creative changes, but your asset itself, it's solid. So you can just hit render on different environments and it will do what it's supposed to do. It's just look correct in its very environment. And then you have like the sequence getting very, very balanced throughout right away without having too much hassle checking shots. This one looks a little bit more shiny. This one has a little bit tint. So we don't have that since you just balance everything up front and then one asset, throw it in, render, boom, you're there. Really well done, really good experience, I have to admit.
Do you have like a week? I mean, is there like a time where they put you in a room for ILM and they say, hey, we're going to teach you all of these tools we've built that like do everything that IBK Gizmo would, IBK Color would. I mean, I'm assuming they have their own keyer, or are you guys still using IBK Gizmo, IBK Color?
I think it depends. I think I haven't seen the entire pipeline. I think they just pick few of tools for this project which suits them. Otherwise, I would assume at least that it's going to be quite packed always. So, and you don't need most of them. So they're just like, okay, for this very project, we have this kind of tool sets for this one. And they're pretty amazing. And they have a massive wiki, which goes back for decades, which you can read into what problems on really, really old movies. Amazing things, really, really amazing. So you just look at your childhood movies and like, okay, that's the description, what I have done in here and how they have done and what were the issues and how they tackled those issues. So I think they had a really good attempt of keeping knowledge, because I think that's one of those secrets, not secrets, but it's one of those things you have to, because people change, but if you can try to keep all the information and the knowledge somewhere inside your company, and my feeling, ILM has done that very well.
How is the security in some of these places? I mean, how do they orientate you? How's the orientation when they like, look, yeah, this is security on this movie's tight, and here's what we demand of you, or
Yeah, I mean, of course, ILM with Disney in the back, Disney has the most, I think, advanced security guidelines. So they are the first ones who will address them, just for the sake of getting in line to acquire those projects which come from Disney. So they're actually really high, the standards. But in my opinion, I haven't really felt like a lot of security issues. So they manage this really well, that you don't have, oh, now I have to do this one. I can't do this, so I have to do the other way around. They somehow managed that it felt like very natural to work at. So with checking mails, with interacting with other people, it just felt not natural, not like, I'm really restricted in my abilities to communicate or to transfer information. Of course, you got your security guys, you got your badge and all these kind of the regular things, and of course the NDAs and all this. But the general feeling of it was like, oh, okay, that's feels like just going to every other office, while they under the hood they maintain these high security standards.
That's what I hear from everybody else. They're kind of like it's pretty chill. That's the environment you have to have. It's the environment that makes the work so good.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a volatile environment, you're going to have issues.
Yes, certainly.
So we have Westworld, Division Visual Effects Supervisor, another name.
Yeah. So of course we got like our the VFX suit from exactly Pixamondo back then. We at our office we just did some shots and I just took care of those everything and then heading off. So it's again different name. Not really sure if it's fitting or not, but I was overseeing the work. But most of there were 2D stuff, so it's not really like a visual effects supervisor with heavy 3D things. There was a little bit of matte paints, a little bit of comp cleanup and stuff like that. So it's not like the visual effects supervisor for like crazy things.
I had a student who was a comp supervisor in at the mill, and I could tell he didn't. I can tell he didn't. They don't. He it seems like he didn't last long or something. Like maybe it was the stress or something, And I was like wondered like how stressful is it for a VFX. I'm sorry, for a compositing supervisor, running around all these different departments and doing I mean, this is more of commercials,
Mm-hmm.
But it just seems like he kind of like, I think I'm going to go back to this or.
Of course, it's a whole different story what your daily business is, and most of the times you have to, of course, creative guidance, technical help, how do you set up things and stuff like that, and mostly you come up with, okay, I know exactly what to do, I just do it myself very quickly, but then you're ending up very, very fast doing everything by yourself, and that's, I think, not the point of it. So you have to rely on your team, and you have to try to train your team getting into one boat and spread as much information as you can rather than trying to be the only one who's responsible for everything. So by just doing like every week I try to Girl in the Spider's Web and Iron Sky, we did every week we just get all the sequence guys together like, hey, that's the reason why we have this very element in here is we have to make sure that we get it continue-wise on the other ones. So it's more like spreading this kind of continuity reasons and just the knowledge that everybody is aware on the same page. So, and of course, like reviewing things like, okay, the blacks are too low and all these kind of things, but these are trying to get those to the lead compositor so I don't have to deal with it too much. So you have to be willing to distribute the work and not doing all by yourself, because then you're ending up with everything on your plate and no one knows a lot of things, and then you just trying to keep it for yourself and make yourself the lives is very hard then. So that worked very well. So with compositing supervisor, if you're willing to give up work or let other people do it, you can get around without being stressed too much. You have to have a good team. Also coordination-wise, I was lucky enough to have a really good coordination girl, which makes it really, really nice and smooth everything. So we're a good team. We're sitting 8 hours mostly in one room, in a tiny room, and just reviewing all day. And if you have a good compañero, so it's actually cool to help out these very stress levels.
Mm-hmm. So we've got Pixamondo, The Wandering Earth. Yes. This was the big movie that I think was people say it's like this was the hallmark as far as the quality of the VFX in China, kind of amping it up and competing with major studios. Even though it is Pixamondo, it's just showing that China's starting to kick butt with this specific film, and it's just it's a huge like blockbuster, like I wouldn't say disaster movie, an end of the world movie. What would you say?
Yeah, the thing is, it's really a massive thing over there. It's really haven't reached out too far in the Western countries, but in the Asian market, I think it's kind of a known story and like a very well also advertised movie and things. And it's actually quite impressive what they have asked for, and they weren't gone too cheap on it. Normally, or not normally, sometimes you get a client like, hey, I want to have this massive destruction, I want to have this landscape, this all full CG things, and then they want to have it for cheap. They haven't been that way though. They have it planned more or less like in a reasonable way. And what we have done, we worked in Germany, so we got some sequences over for Germany from our Beijing office, and then we kept working on the Wandering Earth on a certain sequence which you can just try to encapsulate on this very office, that you don't have to spread it tasks between those offices anymore, because if you have a lot of FX, you have to transfer all the caches and things like that. You don't want to do that. And quality-wise, it's actually pretty impressive, yeah, I have to admit. It doesn't look like the stereotype Asian movie which we would expect when you hear like blockbuster movie. It's actually really well done. Also the props, the sets, they have really thought things through, and quality-wise raised the bar quite a bit for Asian movies.
So then you have Shazam, and then Stranger Things, Chapter 8, which is one of my favorite chapters. The Battle of Starcourt, and to give credit where credit's due, this episode, I know I don't want to get anybody upset. There was also Rodeo Effects that did a lot of the monster effects, but you guys did a lot of really awesome effects as well. And I think there was just, how many VFX people contributed, how many post houses contributed to that one episode? Because that was a monster episode of visual effects.
I actually don't know. I just know that we had 3 different ones, I think. And Rodeo had the big portion, of course. They have all the monsters work, which were looking really, really good. So they have the main workload was with Rodeo, and we had some smaller sequences, some one-off shots, and I think there were 2 other smaller vendors involved, which I don't know what kind of work they have done.
Gotcha. And then we have Fast and Furious once again coming back to pay the bills.
Exactly.
Doctor Sleep, which is the sequel to The Shining, which actually I've heard very good things about it. So a lot of people said it was, you try to do a sequel to a film directed by Stanley Kubrick, you're going to get a lot of critics, but I've heard it was actually a really good flick. And in that, what were you guys doing in that? Were you recreating the old sets and were there a lot of like recreation of Danny and all that and all the characters, or?
There were not really like a lot of character work done. They were mostly environments and things like we called it the blood elevator. So we got the reference, hey, from the original Shining, that's what it looks like. We want to have this very shot on the different angle, but the simulation should match the very original one. So, but the environment should be aged, not like the new ones before. So we brought in the original blood elevator reference and trying to match our blood simulation close we can get to the original one. And then of course if you're close enough, then Stanley Kubrick's match it's getting through, so it actually was fine. And then a lot of exterior work, a lot of I think mostly environments, what so far I can tell. Yeah.
And then we have Kingdom of Fire, Babylon Berlin. Was that season 3 or season?
That's season 3. Berlin would be season 3. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then the big Disney super film Artemis Fowl, and then The Kingsman, which is a part 2 of a series, I believe.
Not sure. I think it's the third one already, or
third one.
I have to admit, I can't really tell. I'm not really good with this. Which kind
like
of
a 007 thing with a kid, basically, if I'm not wrong. Isn't that what Artemis Fowl is? Artemis Fowl is like this young kid with powers, and there's goblins and so forth.
Correct. That's Artemis Fowl. It's like I think Artemis Fowl. There are several books, and I think they have tried to squeeze together some of those books into this movie. so far. But we worked just on not like a tremendous amount of shots. So, and of course, I just have the point of view from this very sequence, so I haven't seen the entire film. So I can't really tell what is the whole story about. I read the book up front just to know what it's about, what are the characters and how they get in connection to each other. But then for VFX work, we had a smaller portion, so it's can't really tell what the actual movie is.
So, if you guys are curious, I have links to Falk's LinkedIn, his Vimeo, where he has a couple of tools, and Rise is right here. And if you don't mind, can we go through a couple of these videos here and maybe
Sure.
just walk us through it? This is your 2019 reel. I know you guys are going to be updating soon, as you mentioned, so this stuff might be a little bit, but you got some Avengers.
Yeah, so Marvel is it's a pretty frequent client with Rise, so I think they have been with them with years on several projects, so it's most likely that it will be the same again. Yeah, lots of environment works.
I'm planning on doing a whole series on Video Copilot's lens flare system.
Mm-hmm.
Seems we've conquered the PG bokeh. We're about to finish that up, and then I'm thinking, like, what other common tools should we be covering that you don't usually get a lot of training on? So I'm trying to find somebody that really knows that Video Copilot really well and kind of help me through it, you know.
Yes. I had built for Star Trek Into Darkness for Pixamondo back then, because Star Trek, and yeah, you know, the director really likes those flares. And it wasn't really available optical flares for Windows back then, and so we came up with our own lens flare tool, which was pretty much trying to mimic most of the behaviors from optical flares. Kind of really difficult, I figured out after a while.
I think I have the breakdown on that one. What's going on here? Is this just sparks going off?
I think it's mostly sparks and a little bit, it might be some extension in the background.
Okay.
It could be,
And
then
then
of
you
course
got these
extension.
extensions. And then we were talking about this fun shot
Yeah.
where you had issues with reflections, I think you said.
It's actually pretty. It's a really, really short one, but what you have to do is stitch all those plates together first, because they have a really strong lighting. Then, yeah, of course, you have to get rid of the reflections where the people are moved, because the people were shot on separate plates. So you have to get the reflections from the background, from the lights, get those occluded by the actual by the people, and it's a little bit forth and back and playing to clean it up, then make some reflection-free plates, and then reveal them with those cards again, and reflect the CG car into that. And so it's really a short one, but it's quite some work for these very shots.
Did they have this entire mall in some sort of LiDAR scan or some sort of 3D
I think
model?
most of them were LiDAR scan, and we just extended the environment by ourselves just to get the full reflection. So they had LiDAR scans and then some HDR, so we projected the HDR, I think, to the LiDAR, get this as a light source, and what's behind our back, I think, also LiDAR scan, but maybe where they are missing, we just patched in the HDR, if I'm correct. Yeah. So it's a lot of things to do on this short thing.
So like a shot like this, what are you guys adding in?
I think for those were cars. This one is also, I think half of those cars are CG. Bus, some extension in the background, some, I think, foreground cleanups. And so it's a mixture of cleanups, getting then the street crowded, make it look like it's all shot on location, the continuity matching building wise, and I think the very far ending were extended, if I'm right one.
And do you guys use, like, say if there's like characters back here, do you have digital doubles that are motion capped?
I think I think people wise, I think they were good, mainly cars. So
Mainly
really
cars, okay.
populate with cars. So I think half of the cars are CG or even more. And then, yeah, trying to match those looks to, of course, to the plate ones. Just to see a little bit more dense. Same here. Shazam, a lot of environment work, of course, cape, suit, all these things, trying to get back together. Yeah, Hellboy was prior on my time at Rise, but yeah, it's obviously what happened here.
And we were talking last time that it's not just the use of vectors. You have all types of techniques to try to put these little gashes on these characters and so forth.
Yeah, on the first glance, it looks very easy to just run a vector up front, but it isn't. So you have to do stabilization first on different parts, then run the first pass vector, maybe stabilize it with this, maybe run the second pass vector, and then if it fits, then pretty much, then you can just invert all those things and just get it back on top. But you have to do it by bit, so you can't do it for the whole body at once. And then you have the lighting changes and the wrinkles changing from frame to frame, so the vectors freak out. So it's literally for each batch you have to do your own procedure for, okay, I want to place one batch of blood in here. I have to do all this stabilization first, see if it fits, and then bring all those batches in, and then hopefully the client approves where they are going to, if it's happy. Otherwise, we have to try to adapt those things to different areas of the frame.
So there's your blood simulation.
Yeah. I think there were a couple of shots of
Didn't
those.
they do this same thing on Ready Player One?
Yeah.
Except
I think there are way more blood on Ready Player One, but the idea is the same. They also have this scene, but they have more blood involved, and I think they transferred the story then with them by carried on with the blood.
So, like for instance, these shots, I wouldn't call them simple, but I'm just saying they look simple. Like this right here, just extensions.
Correct. These are mostly extensions, snow, and all this. Oh yeah. Mostly, I think, exterior extensions.
Gotcha.
But of course, if you get like 30 or 50 of them, it's getting also quite intense working-wise. Yeah. More fast. Jumping bicycles, darts, crashes, cracks, all these things. To spice it up a little bit. You don't have just a plain... stunt bike rather than just look like the original bike or like the movie bike, and then.
And you were saying that your entire pipeline at Rise is Houdini?
Yes, it is. So this gives us the freedom if they have like big caches or like big effects elements. We don't have to cache them out as you would if you do it in Transfer into Maya or some other application or Katana to render them. So we can stick inside Houdini and then just transfer to the lighting artist the scene and then render it through Mantra at the moment. Yeah. So it's a little bit more convenient that you don't have to change between too many DCCs. Which is, I think, at least for the 3D guys, it's quite nice. It's not that common in Germany yet to use Houdini, especially for lighting, but I think they get used to it. And at Rise, I think as far as I know, they're for quite a while now at Houdini, so those peeps and the pipeline is pretty evolved.
I recently went to a meetup at the Mill in Chicago for the Houdini meetup, and it's interesting. There are times where we were talking to some of the artists, and they resort back to their 3D, their old 3D apps, whether it be Maya or whatever, and to do certain renders because they find that sometimes Houdini can be a little bit too technical. You know, as my colleague once put it, it's like instead of like here's a car to drive, instead you're put in this room with all the pieces of the car, or like a bag of tools, and say, "Good, go to work." You know. That there are times where they like just resort to, I could get this done over here and not have to deal with all these nodes, do you guys ever find that kind of difficulty with Houdini, where you kind of just feels very technical versus a program that just is a little bit more, liberally artistic?
Yeah, I do agree that Houdini is definitely more on the technical side. But on the other hand, it opens up so many possibilities, and you can build your own UIs, your own pipelines inside that it feels more natural. So it has the open the opportunity just to simplify the user interaction if you wish to. But mostly you want to open up those or want to expose those things that people who are actually really familiar with this program see all those parameters rather than having like just 2 sliders for like, oh, I want to have a little bit more glossy than just have the one slider. So most likely you have multiple settings for those, but it's very driven on the physically correctness. So I think it's cool if you understand what's happening, but I also agree that it might be overwhelming if you come from a different application.
This is a clip from Stranger Things, a little bit of the breakdowns. Are you guys working on Stranger Things 4 at all, or are they?
I don't know. Haven't heard so far yet, honestly.
So this shot right here, I'm assuming you guys had one Huey or maybe 2 Huey helicopters, and you had to duplicate a whole bunch of other ones in the background, or?
Yeah, looks most likely, yeah. Which is not that entirely easy if you have like this wobbling shots for each of the helicopters. So you have to, of course, stabilize and then try to match the timing, and then of course continuity-wise with other shots they have to be matching in place. But yeah, basically you're correct.
It really, I love. This is just every scene from this episode was amazing. I mean, just something about it. I mean, I don't know what it was, but it was the way, even as these Hueys approached, and all the rain that was in the foreground of all the CG. It was just absolutely spectacular. Every single shot of this film was
it's very high quality.
The show,
definitely. This looks way easier than it was. This very shot is it's a little bit of green screen in the back. Holy moly, it was not. It was really all the lens flares on top, because you can't just simply add it back on. It hasn't really worked out. So you have to bring all the lens flares back, all the light cones. It's for the small piece on the background. It was a tremendous amount of work. I wasn't expecting that when we first started on this one.
And what are some techniques to bring back that? Is it just?
Of course, mainly it would be additive keying. But for me personally, we went for cleaning up a little bit more of the plate prior all these things. But then I think the easiest thing would be to have one good keyer with a little bit like one keyer for everything, which is like a very soft one, and an underlying additive key on the background, and try to really smoothly dissolve it into one thing rather than have certain areas, a little bit of treatment here, a little bit of treatment there. So I think in this case you're better off if you can have like a very soft white key to keep all those smooth transitions from the light cones and the flares.
And then here you're adding
more blood stains. Of course, extensions of those. If you have one asset, then you just place the camera, render it, and you're good to go.
So this was a combination of a. Was there any 3D renders on this, or was it? I'm assuming there was, right? For the skull itself and the nose.
Exactly. So it's actually really dissolving and falling apart. You can't really tell because since it's shaking so much. We were given the reference from Rodeo, from other shots, which we have to match, so we could not really be entirely free. So in terms of how it should look like and how fast it should be. But I think it's went a little bit further back to give it a first match move, like an object track of her body, and then have a little bit of fiddling around in comp, some more keen tools, face tracking to get some stuff on top of that, and trying to morph a little bit so you get the texture, you unwrap the texture, do all this kind of dissolving effects, and then just wrap it back together. And it's spent also quite some time on this one, but I think it looks pretty good at the end.
And you got to bring
back
all this hair.
Single layers and warping and appearing, disappearing. Yeah,
and this shot, I recently watched this. I'm guessing, what did you guys do on this shot again?
It's the background TV.
The background. So
it's not pretty much.
Yeah, because I went back and revisited this scene on Netflix. He had something else behind him in certain takes, and then I was like, was he on 2 different sets when they filmed it or something, or at least from this angle? Because it was weird. I was like, his background's changing, and
I think the background is changing because it's an entire movie what's playing on there. So it's a movie, like it's one section of footage, and of course it's intercutted, and they have the footage itself has different edits in it, so it changes perspectives and stuff like that. So you don't have one persistent texture like this one. This is a car in the background, and sometimes you just jump onto the face and it looks different.
At first, when I saw
So
your
it's
breakdown, I'm like, did you guys add wrinkles this guy, or is he turning into an alien, or is this part of season 4 where he's some? I'm like, what
as
did they
far
do to
as
this
I'm
guy? He
aware, we
looks
have not.
terrible. You know, immediately when I saw this, I go, did they do something to him? Because he looks horrible. You know what I mean? It looks like he hadn't slept or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and of course the cars again.
There's the car, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, they did have a whole
So-
3D model, rough model
Yeah.
of the environment.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to HDRI for this model, how do you get? Do you have HDR projected from spheres onto this geometry so that the it's not just one HDRI, but it's like an HDRI projected on geometry. That geometry is reflected into the car's windows, or?
I think so, yeah, and I think they placed some more lighting manually to really match the light directions and intensity. Since the car is so shiny, you have to match with these very specific angles and the intensity wise. So I think it's the HDI projection, and on top of that, some editor more lights on top just to spicing it up and to match a little bit closer to the original reflections. It looks also easier than it actually was, but you have to slice up everything from the back to the front, and then use this as a source for particle emission, and was also like quite a long process for look depthing all those things. So the end of the shot might look very simple and straightforward. It actually took quite some time with the client forth and back to figure out what they are after.
Yeah, it's really. So is this like a back and forth between you and like the Houdini particle effects guys, where you're like, okay, here's this segment we've rotoed out. Now you're gonna have to put that through a particle simulator, or is this all you as far as the simulation of particles?
No, everything is 3D rendered, so different, quite a lot of different renders actually. But provide them with textures where they can just reproject onto geometry, and then have it like a shockwave from the back to the front. But it has to match specific timing, since they have story-wise. It's quite important, and they should be not like a shockwave, like in a shocking way. It must be more like dissolving, but can't be very linear. Then it doesn't feel right. So it has to be certain speed ramps onto the explosion or onto the shockwave already. So it's a little bit kind of tricky in terms of how it's supposed to be in the actual movie. But the show supervisor was very nice. Was kind of giving good feedback. So. It took quite some iterations, but at the end it worked out pretty good.
Now this was a little bit while back. This is the season 1 of Babylon Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys did a lot of recreating. What year was it supposed to be? I'm assuming the 40s.
Oh, I would lie if I can tell you. I can't really tell. I'm really bad with those things. But as you see, it's a lot of environment, and I think that's one of the strengths at Rise at the moment, so to have this kind of environment work, which, lines up pretty good.
Anything you guys recommend in regards to tools for rotoscoping? Do you just use Nuke's tools? Do you use Mocha or Silhouette? Or
I think at Rise we mostly use Nuke, but of course Silhouette is also really great to work with. Mocha, I actually try to track everything with Mocha if I have the chance to, since I think it's really, really good tracking system, and then stabilizing roto and just invert the tracker again to apply the roto. So I would go for, my personal thing is Nuke and Mocha, but the only reason is I haven't opened Silhouette in my life ever so far. But what I've heard from people using it, they say it's way better. So I can't really have an opinion about it since I haven't really had my hands on yet.
Yeah, Mad Looks VFX I think has some training on it on YouTube if you guys are curious about Silhouette. And so there's a lot of extensions, a lot of these buildings. So a lot of roto work, definitely.
A lot of roto, a lot of asset building and all these things. But it's the good part is you have like one season. If you have one asset, you can of course reuse it if it appears later on in another season. So if the asset is solid, you can just throw it in different lights. You're good.
Now, in regards to say this shot, you have slight reflections in the foreground because he's looking through a piece of glass or something. Am I wrong about that? Is there glass in front of him, like between us and the character here? Looks like he's got.
Seems like there is something, yeah.
It's like a reflection or something right there.
It feels like it. Oh no, there's a very thin string or in the defocus.
Yeah.
Right to his head. Yeah, that's a string. I think most likely matching the other strings, but very close to the camera and get defocused.
So those are real subtle base keys that you can bring all that stuff back when you layer on your CG and all this foreground element.
I mean, it's a German-based series, but I think it looks very cool.
It just seems like there's so much involved.
Mm-hmm. And that's season 1, so it's season 3.
Wow.
So they seems to be pretty happy, so they kept going, which is nice.
Well, I think we're going to probably move on to the questions. So let me. I did not have the page set up. There we go. And we went through these questions before, where we're doing them again. Try to go through these a little bit better here. So this is John Tott. Where do you see the VFX industry in the post-COVID workplace?
I really hope that we have the opportunity to work remotely also in the future, not just as a temporary solution. I think it would open up a lot of possibilities for people's lives and for scaling it up for the company. If you know people, you can just bring them in onto your project without actually bringing into the office. So I really hope, I really like from my inner self, like that we can keep some of those remote works. But it depends a little bit on the client, since it's not coming from the studio, so they just following the demands from the client or like the restrictions. And if they decide to not agree with them anymore, then perhaps it's going to be gone. But I'm just hoping, since it works out so far, what I've heard, like worldwide, mostly every studio work remote, and I really would hope that we can stay a little bit like that. It's not the same to work remote, but just like 1 day a week or something would be great. Or here and there, if you have like other responsibilities you have to take care of, would be cool for people with kids and stuff like that.
As of this being June 5th, are you guys are officially open? You're not locked down anymore? Or?
I think we are officially government say we can go back. For myself, I'm at home, working still at home, and I most likely will for a couple of another weeks. There are some people working in the office with like tremendous amount between them, like distance-wise. And I think it's a mixture of project-based, who is in the office and who's not. But I think since I'm not doing project work or project-related work at the moment, I rather stay at home to minimize the risk for everyone. And I think they are happy with it, and I'm as well. So I'm good, but other people are in, but again, with internal restrictions. And on top of that, the government's ones.
Let's see here. So we were talking about security-wise people during this period, and I knew of a couple post houses, I won't say, where they actually just still had the employees come to the post house. And I was kind of shocked at that they kept doing it, but security-wise, working from home, everything seems to be okay. You know, even not worrying that someone's going to try to pull. I mean, is there that many people out there that try to take from VFX shots? It's not like you have the entire film on a reel or something.
Yeah, and of course, if you would do it, even if you would do it, you would. It's like, for me, it's 100% sure that they catch you afterwards. So it's not like you do it secretly. So you will get caught, and then you would expect a really high fine. You would risk, of course, other employees' jobs, since they most likely shut down the entire studio. So, But what I heard so far, that most of the clients, although from other vendors, they have agreed for remote work, since of course they can just say, hey, you can either work remote or your movie won't get done. So it's a little bit like
Yeah.
they have to agree of them. But I have never ever seen anything in my entire career working with VFX that someone tries to, oh yeah, I'm gonna leak this thing, or even the attempt to record something. You see it the whole day, and most likely after like 1-2 years, like it's a job and it's content you're seeing, but you're trying to, okay, that's it, and I'm heading home now, and you're not really interested into spreading it into the world anymore. So it's a little bit of attitude as well, I guess, at some point.
We have Shahid Gayer. Some advice, tips for integrating CG and live action footage, for example, edges, color match, etc.
I would definitely go for references. References are really not appreciated enough in this world. And for every shot I'm actually comping, I gather references. And if I have multiple elements I have to place into this one, I gather multiple elements. So if I have like a shiny metal object, either a robot or a plane or whatsoever, I just get reference from the internet, trying to find a more or less matching light direction or light situation first, and the direction, and try to analyze how these edges look like, how perfect they are. If they are perfect, I can leave mine sharp. If they are not, I of course soften it. How does the chromatic aberration appear on these very edges where the contrasts are very high? So just trying to analyze things, and I think then you're good to go. Of course, after a while you know exactly what you're doing, or then you don't have to look at too much reference. But from my point of view, I still do it, and I quite like it, because then if you really dive into referencing and see, oh, this tiny bits, this textures get distorted because there is some heat coming out somewhere which is not taking care of the 3D, you can still do it in comp and make these tiny touch-ups later on, which makes it really believable and lose all the CG look like. So I would say it's not about real techniques, it's about analyzing images, comparing what in the real world. If you can't find images, shoot them by yourself. Just, again, if you're looking for a backlit environment, just shoot a backlit environment and see how things behave. And then compare it to what you have on your in your program.
It's sort of like what you did. You were not satisfied with synthetically created simulations of camera shaking, so you went out with a cameraman and filmed
Exactly.
And used that for your plugin, which is the camera shaker node, which we're going to cover in a bit.
Yes, correct. So it's all about trying to match the real world, and in this case, why not using the real world?
Yeah.
Same for the references.
The Cycling Cat asks, which software would you recommend to learn from zero to hero? How can you get inside the industry? The age-old question. Some advice how to match 3D elements and compose them nicely into a shot made with an Alexa, for example. Thanks in advance. Greetings.
A couple of questions. So I think the first program right now I would recommend doing comp is Nuke, since it's like a standard and so integrated into pipeline, like not only for comp, only for conversion, ingestion, delivery. I highly doubt that it will be gone in the next years. So I think it's a really reliable software to learn. And even if you learn it now and in 10 years it's gone, you still have the knowledge. So it doesn't really make a huge difference if you learn this software or this software. But of course, it's like a tool. If you get used to it, you're faster, you're better, then it's just good. I would go for Nuke. I think Houdini on the 3D side, I think not because it's using it at Rise, but also from very distant, I think this one will come up big time in the very near future. They have like these releases with USD, with Solaris, the PDG. They have so many things pumped into the new release with Houdini 18. I think this is going to be the major software in the next 5 years, rather than Maya or other lighting systems like Katana. I think, I can't predict, but that's what I'm feeling. So I would go for Houdini, and it's so flexible, it's so powerful. It takes some time to understand how Houdini works in the interior, but if you got it, you can do everything you wish to. Integration-wise, same here, references, what I would assume.
And that's sometimes hard because I get a lot of flack for bringing up Corridor Digital. Corridor Digital is like one of the most popular channels on YouTube, and we're getting this new generation of kids that are being raised on Corridor Digital, and it's a great resource. They do great breakdowns, great critiques of CG, but it seems like it's this new generation, and this is where I'm going to get a lot of hate mail. But they're stuck in this After Effects, Blender, Cinema 4D world, and it's just like, guys, gals, we don't use this. We don't use this software in the high-end area. Yes, post houses do. Half the post houses in Chicago use After Effects. They're commercial houses. But when it comes to VFX for film, we need that nonlinear pipeline to workflow. And what you have is a lot of generation of people that are like, hey, man, Blender is everything. I remember I had this one class I was teaching, and I always tell people, as you go through time as a teacher, it's the fountain of youth. You age, the students don't, but their attitudes change over time. And I had this kid the first day of class was like, it's like After Effects is about to clobber nuke, man, as I'm doing an intro to nuke class. He just got up on his, on his soapbox. He's like, man, Cinema 4D is merging with After Effects, and get ready because Maya's going down and all this. And I'm like, what is it? I'm sitting there like, I guess, let me teach this class, and an attitude of like, listen, Blender's free, man, and heck, and I let me tell you, I just spoke to a friend of mine. He's like, I'm learning Blender, man. I'm going for the jump, and I'm like, hey, more power to you. I hear it's great. It's still the idea that this is the software. I'm sorry to say, but this is currently the software. Not sorry to say, but it's Nuke, it's Houdini. It's still there. Even Maya's around. So.
Yeah. And the good part about Houdini and Nuke, at least today, they have both learning editions. So Houdini, I think you can do everything until HD. It's just amazing. They have this independent version for like $200 if you want to use it commercially until a certain income, which is amazing. They have amazing deals with this kind of licensing thing. And you can still learn it because you can use it. It's free as well for your private use. And then, of course, the independent, which is $200 a year, which is nothing if you make money with it. Blender on the other side, I think Blender is actually cool. We have done also shots back at Pixelmondo done with Blender, if I could done correctly. But because only the guys were like, hey, I can do this way faster than in Maya or Max. And then he did, and it was faster, way faster, and it looked good at the end. So there might be options, but I think because you always have to have the pipeline integration, and I have never seen a VFX studio for film working with Cinema 4D. So also After Effects might be cool, not for this very things when you work at film. It's just a different need, what you need to do there. You need a scene linear workflow and not timeline-based sRGB workflow.
So I'm jumping around a little bit. Some of these questions we already answered. Carlos, do you think on the long run studios will be more open to remote freelancing after COVID-19? Or is it something very limited and circumstantial? Many of these studios started claiming it as a conquer of their own. Was it a bit overreacting? In reality, many of us have been struggling for years, being almost ignored by studios for just being away from the post-house hub. Where are all the security measures now? Where are all those NDAs?
Yeah. Again, I really hope that we're going to stay a little bit like that with this remote work. The NDAs are just like, because the client has just one option. Either he allows to have remote work, or his project, movie, commercial, series, whatever it is, won't be finished since the government prohibited to work in an office. So there are just two changes. So they have to, not forcingly, but they have to get a little bit more easen up the restriction, which is the actual remote work, like the NDAs. You still have the NDA. You're not allowed to have like multiple people in this room where you work from home. So that's also like one of those restrictions you would like to have. So it's not like you sitting home with your roommates and just working on your machine. If you're doing this one, of course, you're violating your NDA. But so I think that it has to be this little wiggling room to accept that remote work is doable. I agree that it's difficult to get in touch with a company and directly ask for remote work. I would have an issue with those by myself if I were to hire people I don't know or do not get recommended by other people and hire them directly on remote. It could work out, of course, but if I have the chance to someone I actually know or someone recommended to me, I would rather go for this one. So I think it's a good thing to first get in touch with the company, try to be on site, and then later on, like, hey, actually I'm living outside. What do you think about remote work? But then first prove yourself on site before you go off site.
Well, with that said, we're probably going to end it here. Thank you, Falk, for taking time out of your busy schedule and sharing with us your knowledge of the industry.
Sure.
And we'll see you next time on Tool Time in Nuke.
Cool. Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.